The second module of the software is the exposure database module. The problem in many countries in the world is that we don't have a good location and description of things that might be affected by a particular hazard. So in this exposure database module, this would contain elements at risk. For example, the location and attributes of houses, meaning the age of the house, the typology of the house, when it was constructed, the different materials used, how many people are there inside the building, also the description of buildings and infrastructure. So essentially, everything can be placed in the data module. You can even superimpose the location of these buildings in a map, like a Google map. What is the importance of this module or database? Well, obviously, for disaster risk assessment, you would know if there's an earthquake, how many buildings are exposed to a particular hazard, how many people will die, how many people will get injured. You can calculate those if you have this database. But we don't have this database all over the country because our local governments don't have a digital database all over the cities, maybe for some. Even our NSO use paper and tables and a database, but they are not geographically linked to a specific location. Even our assessor's offices, even our business permits offices in cities don't have a common digital database. So we have formulated this database and everyone can use this, and in the end, pool everything so that you at the community level and us at the national level and even the private organizations can have a better grasp of which communities and how many people will be affected or not to be affected by a particular hazard. The local governments can update this. The third module is the impact assessment module. If we have a hazard map and if we have an exposure database for a specific city, we can now estimate damages to buildings for any type of building, the casualties, fatalities, and injuries, and even economic losses. That's why in Manila we have shown reported the new figures of our estimates for the impacts in Metro Manila, and these were run using the software. And the estimates of the software were compared with the estimates of another way of computing it, but this would come the same. Okay? Now, how many provinces have been trained using this software? Well, originally we have trained more than 50 provinces, but without the latest hazards or the impact estimation module. Okay? I think one city here in Liquefaction, the steps and what you're supposed to do in Cebu for us to have a better data. Because we can easily generate numbers, but if the input is not so good, then that would not be very appropriate. So what are the hazard scenarios for Cebu and vicinity? To understand an earthquake is to understand that earthquakes provide multiple hazards. The first hazard is that literally, earthquakes are defined as the shaking of the ground due to rock movement. But the earthquakes are actually generated when faults move. Okay? So the fault would move to generate the shaking. So the first hazard that you wanted to know is, where is the active fault in Cebu? Why is that the first question you want to ask? Yes?
So that you will know.
Because you're all fault finders. You wanted to know where the fault is. However, the fault is very narrow. It's not more than a meter in most places, less than 1 foot actually in many. The major hazard is actually when the ground would shake. The ground shaking, it can cause collapse of buildings. And building collapses would actually kill people. The ground shaking can also cause grounds, which are soft, to liquefy. Okay? The strong ground shaking can also cause steep slopes to suffer from landslide. And the strong ground shaking can also cause fire to start. The strong ground shaking is really the major hazard, and there are secondary hazards related to it. The fault, it ruptures the ground. If something is on top of it, it can be ruptured. The fault, if it's offshore and moves to lift up the water above it, then a tsunami can be generated. So all of those are the hazards related to earthquake. But typically, in very wide land masses, if the fault is inland, these would not generate tsunami. But if the fault and the earthquake is even on land, but near shore, it can even trigger a tsunami. Okay? So let me do this one by one. Faults. Faults are described in many ways, and there are many vernacular terms for faults. I think in Cebuano, liki. Liki, right? In Tagalog, some people would try to use bitak, but bitak means it's open. So the better term is the fracture. It's a fracture in the ground where rocks have moved before and earthquakes have been produced. But we also define that not all faults are active. There are inactive faults. There are many inactive faults. Active faults are those that have produced earthquakes historically. We have witnessed one or recorded one, and or has moved for the last 10,000 years. Let us worry about the age of the fault. But essentially, active faults are the faults that can move and generate earthquakes. And there are three pure types of motions of the faults. The first is simply a horizontal motion. Second would be a normal fault, a vertical motion, where one block would move down relative to the other, or a thrust or reverse fault, where one block would move over on top of the other, parang sasampa. The earthquake that happened in Negros Oriental and Bohol, Negros Oriental in 2012 and Bohol in 2013, were related to a thrust or reverse fault. That is why, if you go to Bohol, you see a fault there, called the Inabanga fault, which moved vertically. And literally, the fault moved diagonally, and Bohol, the southern part of the block that moved, like Tagbilaran, moved northwards relative to southern Cebu by 55 centimeters immediately during the earthquake. So if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend in Tagbilaran and you're from southern Cebu, you're 55 centimeters closer to each other immediately after the earthquake. That's the power of a big earthquake event. What happens during a rupture of the ground? You will see these rice paddy dikes during the 1990 earthquake in Rizal Nueva Ecija, and these pilapils or rice paddy dikes were formerly connected to this one. This one got displaced towards the left relative to the other. So this is an example of a strike-slip fault. This fault rupture was 125 kilometers long, and the ground was ruptured within 45 seconds for 125 kilometers. So the speed of rupturing is more than 3 kilometers per second. If you happen to be there and your friend is on the opposite side, your friend will be moved towards the left side immediately. But you will not die because the fault does not open up the ground and eat a person alive. Sa sine lang po yun. Okay? So if you're out in the open, you're okay. The other type of fault would be a vertical one. This is a reverse fault, where one block moved up relative to the other. This is a track and field area. This is not hurdles, but actually the track. This happened in Taiwan. So given this, where would you think the fault in Cebu would pass through? This map would show you the different earthquake generators on land in Region 7, including the faults in Cebu Island. Okay, the faults in Cebu are shown there, and the map would actually indicate the different towns or areas transected by the fault. Okay, you know this area? What is that city? It's Cebu City. Closer to the mountain, there's a fault. So it's really near the mountainous area. Okay? But don't worry. Even if the other cities don't have their own fault, they need to prepare for earthquakes also. Not only the cities transected by the fault. Okay. The effects of a ground rupture is easy to be avoided by not constructing on top of the fault itself and by having a buffer zone of at least 5 meters away from the fault trace. This is a house on top of the Aglubang River Fault in Mindoro, which moved in 1994. So the house got destroyed, the middle part. The picture at the bottom shows the North Pole Fault, which moved up like close to 2 to 3 meters here, and a house roughly 10 meters away from it, not destroyed during the shaking because it was not on top of it. So the clue is avoid the fault and then build a house which can resist the strong ground shaking. And a light material house like a wooden house can resist the strong shaking. Do you know that in Asia, earthquakes are a discriminator of economic classes? They kill middle-income people. Because middle-income people have their own bungalow house but not very strong. They don't kill those in shanties or nipa huts. Buko lang po hinabot nila. Kung bumagsak. Kill the very rich people because they have very good buildings. So we need to focus on those. Away with the fault finding. We need to focus now on the ground shaking. Ground shaking is simply the earthquake. And typically there are two types of shaking. First is the vertical motion, and the second, the horizontally moving motion with other types of waves, which are somewhat horizontal, longer lasting, and that type of shaking can cause the collapse of building, or if things will not topple, if will not collapse, things will topple down or fall down. Now, how do you know if the earthquake is near you or not? How would you know? What will be your answer? Wait for FIVOX to announce? Watch the news on TV? Listen to the radio? Follow FIVOX on Twitter? Or Facebook? Yes, you can do that. But I'll tell you a tip not written in the textbooks. Since the earthquake has several types of shaking, the first is the vertical, recorded by the seismograph, and then the next one is the longer horizontal. If you're really near the epicenter and if the earthquake is strong, then you would feel the vertical motion first and then horizontal. But that vertical motion will not be felt by people far from the epicenter. After a few seconds, if you're near the epicenter, you will feel the sideways motion. This will definitely be felt by people from a distance. So let's review. Who were here during the Bohol earthquake here in Cebu? Okay, what did you feel? Vertical or horizontal?
Horizontal.
Horizontal. Because you're already away from Bohol. But if you were from Bohol, they would have felt the vertical motion first. I think, boss, you're supposed to be seated there. Oh, mamaya na. Okay. So, if the Cebu faults would move, what will you feel first? Up and down. Okay? So, you don't need to wait for me. You know it moved. Or the epicenter is near you. Kasi there are other faults offshore, no? So at least, you know, why do you need to know that? Because if you just felt the horizontal motion, that is better news. Hindi naman good news. Better lang. Kasi nararamdaman pa rin yung shaking. Because if you're near the epicenter, you will feel strong aftershocks. So you really need to get out of the building immediately after the main shaking. Magnitude versus intensity are descriptions of the strength of an earthquake, and people get confused with these terms. Sometimes people would focus only on the magnitude and compare earthquakes because of the magnitude. Well, how is an earthquake generated? If this is a fault and the fault moves vertically, it will start to break the rocks from below. The moment the rocks are broken, since the rocks store energy, it will release an energy. And that amount of energy is called the magnitude. Magnitude is the energy released. The magnitude or the energy or the earthquake itself is a wave. That wave will move spherically outward from the source or the focus of the earthquake. As it passes through rocks, the energy will be partly absorbed, and once it reaches the surface, the energy there is not 100% of the original. It's much less. What you feel on the surface is now called the intensity. It is the impact of the earthquake. Why do you need to know the difference? A major earthquake is classified as those with magnitude 7 or greater, like the Bohol earthquake. If that earthquake was sourced 100 kilometers deep, the energy that reaches the surface will be of a certain intensity. However, if that magnitude 7 occurs at 5 kilometers below the surface, then the energy that will be felt at the surface will be much stronger than the previous one, because it is shallower. So a major earthquake, which is less than 30 kilometers, is really a devastating earthquake. Okay? Now, if you still have difficulty understanding magnitude and intensity, let's use a boxer's arm or hand. A boxer would have a speed when he boxes and a certain weight. That has an energy. But the effect to his opponent will be dependent on the build of the opponent and the training of the opponent. If he's well built, like a very strong building, he will just stand still, even if you box him. But if the opponent is not well prepared, is so fragile or thin, he will be killed or he will be knocked out. So for earthquakes, the magnitude can be very strong, the intensity can be very strong, but whether the building will absorb or not, that kind of strength will be dependent on the workmanship, the design, and the quality of materials used for that building. And that's earthquake preparedness. Whether you conduct drills or not, if your building will collapse, you still have a major problem. Okay? So making sure that we understand the intensity of the earthquake is very important, so that you design the buildings properly. For architects and engineers, they use ground acceleration. Okay. In the Philippines, we use a 10-point scale, and we subdivided the intensity from 1 to 5 and 6 to 10. Only at intensity 6 will there be a damage, very minor damage. That is intensity 6, when objects will swing violently and things on the table will fall down. Intensity 7 is also a destructive earthquake, but a very destructive earthquake starts at intensity 8. At intensity 8, things might fall, and you would have difficulty standing. So for those people in Bohol during the earthquake, they had difficulty standing. They felt an intensity 8. Kaya dito sa Cebu, you can still stand. Okay? So what is the scenario? If the fault in Cebu moves, and the whole length of the fault would move, then a magnitude of 7.5 can happen in Cebu. And that magnitude 7.5 can be translated into shaking intensities. The closer to the epicenter, the higher the intensity. Away from the epicenter, the lower. So the red there is close to intensity 8. It's actually intensity 8, very destructive in most areas of Cebu and some parts of Negros Oriental. And destructive 7 in the northern part of Cebu, if the epicenter is the central part, western areas of Bohol and Negros Island. Okay, and away 6 for those in yellow. Okay. So, if there's a major earthquake in Cebu, those in Bohol and Negros, Panay, and northern Mindanao and Leyte can help Cebu right away because they will not be affected much. What is intensity 8 shaking? Sino nang nakaranas ng intensity 8 dito? Pagkataas ang kamay. Saan sir kayo nun? Saan po? Tagaytay? Anong year pong earthquake? Yung matagal na. Opo. Okay. Anyway, if you're in Bohol, intensity 8, pero kayo sa Cebu, 7. So this is an intensity 8 shaking in Kobe. Okay? You would see 2 people transacting. Suddenly they would stop. Please note the vehicle there and all the cabinets and tables.
Oh my God.
Okay? So they cannot stand. That's intensity 8. Ulitin natin. They stopped, they felt the vertical motion. Okay? So So the table was moving, so they have to hold the table for balance. Okay? So if there's an earthquake now, for example, just example, what will you do? Okay, mamaya, dadaanan natin to. Mamaya na. Mamaya na. Okay, now if you're sleeping, like this TV station personnel, and that's intensity 8. Cabinets came falling down. That's why you need to anchor the cabinets. Better if it's built in. The guy rolled and covered his body with a blanket, maybe unan. What's the lesson that you need to learn from this? You need to know how to respond during an earthquake, right? And before you sleep, you make sure that the place where you sleep is safer. And the cabinets that are beside you will not fall on you. Okay? So if you can imagine that kind of shaking, what do you think will happen to many buildings here? Huh? To your company's facilities. To your houses, if you don't want to be concerned with your office. You should imagine the consequence. So if you want to respond to a strong ground shaking, the first thing that we must do is inspect all houses, buildings, and infrastructures. And if you want to be prepared here in Cebu, you need to do that together with the local government. You need to ask, how safe are your houses? How safe are the government and private buildings? Churches, mosques, malls, or infrastructures. To help people evaluate their own houses, for 1 to 2-story concrete houses, PVOX, together with the Association of Structural Engineers of the Philippines and JICA experts, produced a questionnaire of how safe is my house, a 12-point questionnaire for earthquake safety, where they can evaluate whether their house will be okay or not with a strong earthquake, and also for them to be guided on which items they need to focus on when they are constructing their own house. It's a 12 question, and at the end of the question, you sum it up. Every question will have an answer of 1 or 0. One of the questions would be like, are the concrete hollow block made of 6 inches for the outer walls? If yes, 1. If no, 0. If you don't know, it is not clear or unknown, you score it 0. Just like in school, if you don't know anything, 0 ka. So, for every question, there is a score of 1 or 0. And you total it. We tested this questionnaire in Bohol, and those with scores of below 8 really got damaged or collapsed. We formulated the questionnaire way back before Bohol earthquake. No? Hindi namin ginawa yan just because of the Bohol earthquake. We did testing of houses in Japan. We built houses in Japan on top of big shaking table. Way back in 2011 to 2012, we've been doing experiment so that we can test certain Philippine houses. So I hope that you can use this. If you're a local government, you will know which houses in your area are more vulnerable than the others. Responding to a strong ground shaking would also need a plan on what you need to do before the earthquake and during the earthquake. And in particular, if you want to be safer individually, you need to know where the safe spots are. And you also need to practice the drop, cover, and hold approach. What does it mean when you say drop, cover, and hold? Magtago sa ilalim ng mesa. Well, if you're underneath a table, drop and cover, you're already inside it. What do you hold? You don't hold your hands together and put it on top of your head if you're inside the table already. You need to hold the table or the legs of the table. Otherwise, the table will move away from you. Okay? Now, remember the words drop, cover, and hold. You can also use the phrase under the table. Commonly, the phrase under the table has a very bad connotation. But a good use of under the table is only during earthquake events. Now, if there is no sturdy table, you go to a safe spot in the building, like where you have a column and beam, away from glasses or things that might fall down. You squat, you kneel, you sit down and cover your head and neck with your arms. Stay put during the shaking. After the shaking, you get out of the building to an open area. That's drop, cover, and hold approach. Let me say that the triangle of life that you read in the internet is a hoax message, because it tells you to lie beside the table and not hide beneath it. Because it supposes that during an earthquake, it's a static event, that only the ceiling will move and not the table. The ceiling will fall down on the edge of the table and form a triangle. How can that be? If the floor is moving, the ceiling will also move, and the table will move away from you. You will have no protection. Mali po yun. The other variation of the triangle of life is, instead of looking for a wooden table, why not use a metallic object so that when the ceiling collapses on it, it will not be squashed like a wooden table. And what would that object be? Commonly in houses, this would be refrigerators. But what would happen if you lie beside the refrigerator? It will topple on you, and you might die. So don't really listen to all what is written in the internet. If you follow the triangle of life and you lie beside the refrigerator, and if you die, you will serve the purpose of the refrigerator. You know what I mean already. You will be placed inside the bigger refrigerator. Anyway, you need to simulate your response during an earthquake. You know the drop, cover, and hold, but do you actually do the drills? Yes, in your company. But do you do the drills at your houses?
No.
In churches?
No.
In malls? In school? We need to do that. If the ground is soft, there will be liquefaction. The sand grains will be compacted and the water will be squeezed out. And houses and buildings that are built properly, if these are tall, will subside or tilt. The process is called liquefaction. Water-rich sediments behave like liquid during strong ground shaking. Sediments are essentially rearranged into a more compact state. The term is liquefaction, not liquidation, because it's used by accountants already. Okay, what are the effects of liquefaction? Bridge foundations might move down, so the bridge is now underwater. The buildings might tilt or collapse. Nung bata ako, merong advertisement ng PNB nakasandal sa pader. This is it. The roads will be fissured, and pipes can be destroyed. Water tanks can be buoyed up. If the ground is soft and there's a strong ground shaking, you will see roads fissured, and you will not be able to use this road right away. So responding to a major event will be affected if bridges and roads are affected. Liquefaction-prone areas are areas that are water-saturated with shallow water table, have loose or unconsolidated sand or silt deposits, and typically these are the flood-prone areas, riverbanks, coastlines, swamps, and even reclaimed areas. So all those yellow-colored areas, which are essentially on the coast or beside major rivers, are liquefaction-prone. Landslides also happen during an earthquake. Okay? Kung mayroon pong mayor dito or elected official, this is just a joke po, ha? Feel magalit. A strong earthquake is better than a well-financed political campaign, because they always ensure a landslide. Just like during the 1990 earthquake. Okay? So you would expect landslides in the steep slopes of Cebu if the fault in the central part of Cebu would move. So that's another problem. So where are the landslide-prone areas in Cebu? All of those in colors, especially in red and pink, and even orange, would have moderate to high susceptibility to landslide. This would be in very steep slopes. In fact, during the Bohol earthquake, there were areas, I think in Argao and nearby areas, which suffered from minor landslides. Okay, tsunami. Tsunamis happen everywhere. Tsunamis can be small, can be large. So don't worry right away if we have tsunami warning. Maybe the tsunami that will visit you will not be too tall, but it can be tall as well. And this would essentially be caused by the following: undersea earthquakes, landslides offshore, volcanic eruptions, and meteor impact. Among the processes that I mentioned, which do you think would be the more common? Undersea earthquake and landslide. During the 2012 Negros Oriental earthquake, there were big tsunami events affecting western Cebu and eastern Negros because of landslides on the shore, offshore. Okay? So, if there was a tsunami warning in your area, then it is possible that the blue ones are caused by minor events. It can be possible that this can be triggered by earthquakes in between Cebu and Negros and Cebu and Bohol, and also landslide triggered tsunami. Now, the more important thing that we need to do here in Cebu City is really prepare for a strong earthquake. We don't know when it would happen, so we really need to first establish a very good exposure database by helping the local governments describe all the structures here. You can use our software for the data, and then we can estimate the potential casualty like what we did in Metro Manila. But what do we really do for Cebu? You know, Cebu is one of the mirror cities of big offices and companies in the Philippines. So we need to make sure that we develop a governance and a business system which is resistant to earthquake impact. Because Cebu is one of the biggest cities in the Philippines that would actually absorb some of the things that Metro Manila is doing. For example, is the provincial government of Cebu ready for an earthquake? Or the city? Or the businesses, are you ready for a strong earthquake? In Metro Manila, that's the question that I posed, because Metro Manila is the seat of national agencies and big businesses, and even the banking system. Second, we need to improve the urban structures. I'm not saying it's not good, but we need to check and then improve. Third is enhance the current risk and emergency management. I'll explain this in detail. Fourth is enhance community disaster management capacities. Communities need to know how to respond by themselves right away, because the impact might be large. Many communities need help. Number 5, which is somewhat unique in many presentations, is that if you're really concerned with your city and of major disasters, you need to have a reconstruction system already before it happens. Ideally, for example, if we have anticipated Yolanda, then we could have a reconstruction plan implemented right after Yolanda. It's somewhat difficult to do, but we can do it. And of course, the 6th focus would be research and technology development for making sure that buildings and other systems are earthquake resilient. Example of priority approaches to contend with a strong earthquake. We need to enhance legal basis and support at the local level. And more importantly, we have to strengthen institutional capacities by helping one another, by formulating networks not only within the province but beyond, so that we can respond faster to a major event in Cebu. It might not be an earthquake, but another hazard. We need to build capacity for relief and recovery. And the very first thing that we need to do is focus on the emergency health and medical response systems. Are our hospitals okay? Will they be there after a major earthquake? Do we have good road systems that can be reliable and still existing after a major earthquake? You need to focus on major roads. Are your airports and seaports okay? For example, we need to have one pier in a nearby port that is earthquake resistant so that ships can land and bring in necessary supplies. Do you have enough water source and supply after a major earthquake? Will they be there? Will your power and communication systems be operational after a major earthquake? Strengthen community preparedness for earthquakes and other related hazards. It's a very easy thing to do, but we need to do it massively. We need to enhance self-reliance and mutual help from different communities for efficient risk management. And we need to inculcate disaster mitigation culture among our population. And this will need to start from all of us present here. Are you safe? Is your family safe in case there's a strong earthquake? Number 4, and this is the vital parameter in reducing risk is to strengthen our buildings and houses. To make sure that the buildings are not only earthquake resistant, but fire resistant. Number 5, this is very important for governance and business. We need to protect the stability of government function from the city to provincial level and even to the regional level. We need to ensure continuity of socio-economic systems, both from government and private organizations. Question is, for the companies here, do you have your business continuity plans? For governments, do you have your own service continuity plans? If not, then let's do it. Otherwise, how can we help others if we ourselves are affected? So let me end by saying that Cebu and vicinity can be affected by various natural hazards, including earthquakes. Compared with typhoons, which can be forecast by Pag-asa, earthquakes are sudden onset events, and they can cause very widespread impacts. Of course, there are preparedness, mitigation, and response plans, but these plans must be based on appropriate hazard and impact scenarios. And appropriate hazards and impacts can only be done if we are able to imagine the possible disasters that can happen in your area, so that if we know the problem, we imagine the problem, we can craft and implement appropriate solution. My friends, many information are available. Tools and plans are available. Even human resources are plentiful here in Cebu and Central Visayas. The only thing that we must do is now collectively put our heads together, work hand in hand to make sure that our communities are safer and resilient to disasters. I hope that after I speak, I'm able to convince you that we need to prepare for an earthquake here in Cebu. We don't know when it will happen, but Negros has been affected, Bohol has been affected. I'm not sure if it's nature's reminder to you that you need to prepare. If you need to know more about things that are related to earthquake, tsunami, and even other things, or know what's the latest earthquake or tsunami warning, these should be available in our website, available in our FIVOX page, and also available in our Twitter account. Who has Twitter accounts here? In your or official Twitter accounts or private accounts? Meron na po ba kayo? Okay? Oh, only few people would have Twitter accounts. No? I hope, just like what we have done already, sumunod naman po kayo sa ma-tweet na daan na pinapairal ng ating gobyerno. Maraming po salamat sa inyong lahat.